The wallet is scuffed at the corner, the leather gone soft the way it only does after a decade of the same back pocket. You count out $6.42 in exact change for 2 coffees and a scone, because that's the ritual you and your sister have kept since you were teenagers splitting a bus fare. The barista slides the cups across the counter without looking up. Your sister is scrolling through a soccer schedule on her phone, complaining about Saturday practice times. Neither of them has any idea that the card sitting unused in that same worn wallet is linked to an account that cleared $650 million 9 years ago, and hasn't stopped growing since. "You okay?" your sister asks, glancing up. "You've gone quiet for a second too long." "Yeah," you say. "Just tired." She doesn't push. Nobody ever does, because nothing about you gives them a reason to. 9 years earlier, you were somebody else. Not a different person, just a version of yourself running different math in the background. You and 2 co-founders had spent 6 years building a logistics analytics company nobody outside the industry had heard of, quiet software shaving percentage points off shipping routes for mid-size retailers. Then an email arrived from a buyer out of Seattle, opening with the words, "We've been watching your growth numbers," and 11 months of due diligence later, on a Thursday afternoon in October, a wire cleared that rewrote the arithmetic of your entire life. You were refilling the dog's water bowl when the confirmation email landed. You remember the exact weight of it tipping in your hand, water sloshing over the rim onto your sock, because you'd stopped moving without noticing. $650 million. You read it 3 times. The dog barked at the back door, wanting to go out, completely unaware that the doorbell had just become the least important sound in the house. Here's the part nobody warns you about. The money isn't the hard part. Telling people is. 4 people heard the real number that first month. Your college roommate was the third, sitting across from you at his kitchen table, a beer sweating a ring into the wood. You watched his face change in real time, not envy exactly, something quieter, some private recalculation happening behind his eyes, like he was seeing you through new glass for the first time in 14 years. "That's a lot," he said, setting the beer down carefully, like the table itself might tip. "Yeah," you said. 3 days later he called about a loan for a kitchen remodel, something he'd never mentioned once in the decade before. You gave it to him. He paid it back in full, on schedule, every payment. But something between you had shifted, permanently, and neither of you ever said so out loud. That was the moment you decided. Never again. So you built a story instead of a confession. You sold a company. You did fine. You're comfortable. People filled in their own blanks, usually landing somewhere between 1 and 5 million, and you let them, because correcting the math would cost you more than the silence ever could. Picture the house. 3 bedrooms. Laminate counters you've meant to replace for 6 years and never have, because new granite would mean explaining where the money for granite suddenly came from. A yard you mow yourself every Saturday at 9, in the same faded university t-shirt, waving at Gary next door, who has no idea the man behind that push mower could buy his entire street without touching a retirement account. The car stays modest too, a 2016 Honda CR-V, a dent in the rear bumper you never fixed, because a driveway tells a story before you ever open your mouth. When it finally dies in year 4, you replace it with something almost identical. Nobody notices a replacement. Everybody notices an upgrade. That single sentence becomes something close to a personal doctrine. The actual money lives somewhere else entirely, an LLC with a name so deliberately forgettable that even you need a document to remember it, managed by an advisory team you meet twice a year in a glass conference room 2 hours from your own city, never the one you sleep in. The lead advisor, a woman named Denise with a watch that costs more than your car, once asked you, not unkindly, "Have you thought about where you actually want to live? Somewhere that fits the number?" "I live where I live," you told her. She didn't ask again. You've learned to build a life like a house with rooms that never open into each other. The room where the money exists. The room where your real life happens. You are the only door between them, and some nights, lying awake, you realize you've spent so long guarding that door you've forgotten what it feels like to walk through it without checking over your shoulder first. Here's a number that sits with you longer than you'd like. $650 million, invested conservatively at a modest 4%, generates roughly $26 million a year without you lifting a single finger. $26 million, arriving silently, every year, while you're standing in a Saturday morning yard deciding whether the mower needs new blades or has one more season left in it. Your father made that exact calculation 30 years earlier, in a different yard, over a different mower, except for him the $40 actually mattered, actually meant something else had to go without that month. You think about that constantly, how close you technically remain, in blood, in temperament, to a man who once agonized over $40, separated from him now by nothing but 11 months of due diligence and a Thursday in October you didn't choose so much as survive. Then comes the phone call that tests everything. Your sister's name lights up your phone at 8:40 on a Tuesday. You're standing in a gas station parking lot, the fluorescent sign buzzing overhead. "My transmission's gone," she says. Her voice has that specific flatness people get when the math in their head isn't working. They want 2,800. I don't have 2,800. You could fix this in 4 seconds. You could send the money before she finishes the sentence and never feel it leave your account, the way you'd never feel a penny leave a $5 bill. Instead, you hear yourself say, "Let me loan you the money." A pause on the line. "You sure?" "Yeah. Pay me back whenever." She pays you back at $255 a month for 11 months. You take every payment. Refusing even one would be the thing that finally gives you away, and somewhere around month 7, entering another Venmo transfer into a spreadsheet no one will ever see, you understand that protecting the lie sometimes costs more than the truth ever would have. By year 3, the weight starts showing up somewhere specific, in your body. You catch yourself rehearsing conversations before they happen, running simulations of what you'll say if someone asks a direct question. A therapist, one of exactly 2 people on earth who know the real number, gives the pattern a name one Thursday afternoon, her office quiet except for a white noise machine humming in the corner. "It's hypervigilance," she says. "The same nervous system response combat veterans describe." "Except my threat isn't a person," you say. "No," she agrees. "It's a sentence." At a barbecue that same summer, your best friend tells a story about a coworker who inherited money and was terrible at hiding it, the overspending, the vacation photos that didn't match the salary on paper. The whole table laughs. You laugh too. Underneath the laugh, without meaning to, you run a silent inventory of your own tells. Here's the part that reorders everything you thought you understood about money. You watch people you love agonize over this cost you nothing to solve. A wedding budget. Medical bill your roommate quietly stresses over for 6 months before admitting it out loud over beers, staring at the table instead of at you. You know, sitting right there, that you could end each of those anxieties in a single afternoon and never feel the dent. And you don't. Not because you are. Because solving it each requires an explanation. Explanation is the one thing 9 years of your life have been built to prevent. That's the loneliness nobody prepares you for. Not the loneliness of having no one, you have people, real ones, people who'd show up at 3 in the morning if you called. It's the loneliness of being loved by people who cannot fully know you, of carrying the single largest fact of your adult life into a room they're never allowed to enter. Your therapist asks you once, directly, what you're actually afraid would happen if the truth came out. You expect your answer to be about safety, the things wealth advisors warn about in orientation binders, kidnapping, extortion, targeted crime. But when you actually sit with the question, the real answer surprises even you. "I'm not afraid of danger," you tell her. "I'm afraid of becoming a number instead of a person." To everyone. Permanently. You watched it happen once, to an acquaintance who went public after a smaller windfall, watched the way people's eyes changed when they looked at him afterward, calculating instead of seeing. You built this entire architecture not to protect the money. To protect the last version of yourself that gets to just be a person in a room, ordinary, loved for reasons that have nothing to do with a wire transfer. Year 6 brings the closest call yet. A former colleague from the original company, someone who knew the acquisition terms down to the decimal, relocates to your city for an unrelated job and starts showing up at your gym, on your schedule, twice a week, like clockwork. One Tuesday, toweling off near the water fountain, he says it almost casually, "Man, you really landed on your feet after the sale, huh?" "Did all right," you say, and change the subject to his kid's little league team. He lets it go. You don't. You spend 11 days afterward replaying every version of what he might have said, and to whom, running it at red lights, at your desk, at 2 in the morning staring at the ceiling. Nothing comes of it. But for 11 days you understand, with total clarity, exactly how thin the wall really is, built from nothing sturdier than other people's disinterest and your own exhausting maintenance. By year 7, something shifts, quietly, the way most real change in your life seems to arrive. You stop white-knuckling the secret and start simply living inside it, the way you'd stop noticing an unusual floor plan after enough years in the same house. The vigilance becomes background noise instead of a foreground alarm. You get better, or maybe just more tired, at holding both truths at once, the mowed lawn and the $650 million, without the friction between them showing up on your face at the dinner table. And in that stillness, you do something you couldn't have done in year 1. You give, quietly, engineered to leave no trail back to you. An anonymous scholarship fund at your state university, routed through a foundation whose paperwork legally seals your name from the record. A mortgage, paid off in full, for a family from your old neighborhood, delivered through an intermediary who never once mentions where it came from. You cannot tell anyone you did any of it, which strips away every ordinary reward generosity usually provides: the thanks, the warmth, the story you get to tell about yourself at a dinner party. What's left, once all of that is stripped away, is something closer to the actual reason anyone is supposed to give in the first place. It takes you nearly a decade of hiding $650 million to stumble backward into that realization. Your niece turns 18 this spring. At her birthday dinner, over a cake with too many candles for anyone to actually count, you watch her talk about community college and a part-time job at a shoe store, and you understand you could rewrite the entire shape of her next decade with one transfer that would mean nothing to your balance and everything to hers. You haven't done it. Not out of caution. Because you're still working out how to hand someone a door that large without the door becoming the only thing she ever sees when she looks at you, the way it became the only thing your roommate could see 9 years ago, the moment the number left your mouth. Some mornings, standing at the same counter, in the same modest kitchen, you catch yourself comparison shopping for groceries out of pure habit, checking a price against a memory of what it used to cost, even though the difference could never touch you now. Your therapist calls it an echo. You call it the last room in the house that still belongs to the person you were before any of this, and some part of you refuses to let the renovation reach that far. Nobody watching you push a mower across your lawn on a Saturday morning would guess a single sentence of this. That is the entire design, and it is also the entire cost. You built a life invisible enough to protect the people inside it, and in doing that, you made yourself invisible inside your own story. The wire cleared on a Thursday 9 years ago, and somewhere in the years since, you became two people sharing one body, one who worries about mower blades, and one who could buy the factory that makes them without glancing at a balance first. Saturday again. The mower is due for new blades, you decided that much, at least. Your sister calls just as you're finishing the last row, asking if you and her want to split coffee again this week, same place, same order. You say yes. You hang up, and you stand there for a moment in the cut grass, phone still warm in your hand, the wallet in your back pocket worn soft at the corner, holding a card that could buy the shop she's sitting in. You don't know yet which version of you gets to be the truth the day this finally ends, the day the story you built finally meets the number underneath it, the day someone you love sits across a table and hears the real figure out loud for the first time. You know that day is coming, the way every secret this size eventually finds its way somewhere. What you don't know, even now, 9 years in, standing in your own front yard with the smell of cut grass still in the air, is who you'll be sitting across that table, once the last locked door in the house finally swings open.